So today we are extremely honored to have five fathers who will be sharing their point of views on their journeys, guiding and also helping and working together as a team together with their sons and daughters who have ADHD. And throughout our conversations and while we were preparing for this webinar, while I was speaking with these fathers, I came to look at them very differently and very impressive. And a very important point is they have very different views and very different perspective into helping their children compared to mothers, and both play very different roles. And let me introduce our panelists today. So our first panelist is Frankie Tan. So Frankie is a father of three boys, and one of them is diagnosed with ADHD, ASD, and is dyslexic. Frankie is currently on sabbatical from his job in the sports industry, and he has been involved in the Diets for Life movement since 2009. And then our next panelist is David Su. So David is the father of three children, and one of whom is an ADHD. And he's currently experiencing the roller coaster of the education system and navigating the challenges of parenting during this COVID-19 pandemic. And he is a healthcare professional in Singapore. And Chia Meng considers himself, next we have Chia Meng, and he considers himself a regular Joe trying to parent his kid. I assure you he is no regular Joe. He's definitely a hero to his child. And without the support system from his family back home in Singapore. So his twin daughter, twin as in between teenage and adolescent, has ADHD, and it has been a journey of discovery for him and his wife. And finally, we have David Sim, who is a father of two kids. His son was diagnosed with ADHD and is currently seeking intervention through the public healthcare system. So David and his wife are constantly looking for opportunities to engage their kids in a meaningful way. And these introduction is very short. They don't do these fathers justice. So I am going to allow our panelists, I'm going to invite our panelists to share their stories about how they are dealing with it currently, and then how they came about with the diagnosis. So let us start with Frankie first. So Frankie, take it away.
Hey, thanks, Yuan. Yeah, thanks so much. And hi, good evening, fellow dads. Yeah, good to have you on board. Can't say that good to see you because I can't see your faces. Yeah, but it's so encouraging to have Yuan, a fellow ADHDer to moderate our sessions. Amazing experience. Yeah, so thank you so much. Yeah, there are four of us here, so I'll keep my intro short. I'll just talk a little bit about my family and my ADHD boy. Mention some of the challenges and also some of the learnings as we go along. Hope to have some interaction with the audience later on. Yeah, maybe you can share my slide, Moon or Yuan. Just a picture of my three boys. Yeah, just that one slide. Yeah, thank you. So I'm a father of three boys, 18, 17, and 12. So the one in the middle is 18. The one with the ADHD, ASD, and dyslexia is the one on the left. He's 17, and then my youngest is 12. Yeah, so the 17-year-old who is having ADHD, ASD, and dyslexia, he was diagnosed when he was 6. Actually, when he was about 3 to 4, we started to notice that he's different. Yeah, so at 6, we decided to diagnose him so that we could get some concrete evidence so that when he enters P1, we could come alongside the educators to get them to be on our side, to be his advocates as well when we're not around him. So he's highly unconventional since birth, since young, and highly creative as well, especially in visual arts. Very, very spontaneous and bubbly, especially when he was young. So it's always a spark in the family. Yeah, just to mention the challenges, I'm sure the fellow dads here who have similar children would concur with me. Impulsivity is one big issue. So there's no mental breaks. Anger issues. John used to have a lot of anger issues growing up. Sensorial issues, with sound, with sight, lighting, smell, temperature, even pressure. Entering a car when the door is closed, there's a change of pressure, it gets into him as well. Emotional control, the regular meltdowns, motor skills issues. We noticed that he's very prone to accidents. Even when I was learning how to cycle and skate, he would just crash, into objects, so easily. Because of his dyslexia, he struggled with learning Chinese, especially. When you learn Chinese, you have the pang, right, the left and the right. And having dyslexia, you find it so difficult to differentiate the left and right. Until today, even when you go out and walk, sometimes he can't really differentiate where it's left and right. You literally have to point and get him to see where your hand is pointing. Yeah. Allergies, he has a lot of allergies, food allergies. If he's not careful, he will cause inflammation. So he gets very sensitive in his nasal passages. He has sleep issue. We found out that he actually has sleep apnea because of inflammation. So he had to go for surgery when he was young. And sleep issue with ADHD is also their difficulty in winding down when they need to wind down. And because of his ASD condition, he's very rigid in a way he approached things as well. He thrives on routines. Sometimes when you want to get into a certain routine, like for example, exercise, he will tell himself, I need to do it every day. If I take a break for a day, I won't do it anymore. It's so rigid that there's no way to bend. Yeah. Issues with making friends. So fitting in school, fitting in church can be a big problem because he finds that he needs a lot of energy just to be normal to others, just to be around them, to listen to them, let alone talking to them, interacting with them. Poor organizational skills, just can't put things together, have a lot of ideas, but just can't put them into a package when needed. Procrastination, tendency to wait till the very last minute to get things done because the urgency becomes the only push. Otherwise, there's no motivation to get things done. The energy to do the work is so much more than so-called the reward or the outcome at the end. So poor performance, poor motivation, to some extent, poor health and fitness, very sensitive, dislike exercise because of weather, hotness, itchiness, so on and so forth, especially in our kind of weather, hot and humid environment here. Last but not least, poor self-esteem, anxiety issues, depression issues. Very often in life, you will have depressive moods that may cause him to have suicide ideation as well. So these are things that we would talk to him openly and get him to share some of his struggles as well. Some of the learnings as a father, as a parent, we have been journeying with him for the last 11 years since he was diagnosed. And prior to that as well, we were learning and reading up a lot together with my wife and also his brothers, 2 other brothers. So not just managing John as an ADHDer, but also his siblings, knowing how to communicate with them, talk to them separately, together as a family, telling them why we have to manage them differently from John. It's a learning process along the way because they are taking in everything that's happening on a daily basis. So that has helped convict us of the importance of involved parenting and family management. Yeah, I think that is key. So it's good that the dads are here tonight. It's not about going out there to look for interventions, look for the magic pill, to look for remedies, but it starts from the home, starts from the family. So my dear wife is here as well. I know she's a big support partner to me, a tag team partner. In fact, nowadays she is a parent coach. She has equipped herself so much over the years that she's helping a lot of parents to be better parents, to be better coaches to the children as well. Yeah, so a big shout out to my wife. Anger management, as I mentioned, is a big issue for John. Perspective taking, we have to help him to identify triggers before they reach a boiling point, to know and sense what are the triggers that are coming and how to escape, to find an escape route, before his anger just boils up. ADHD is a neurological issue, so that can drive angry reactions and add stress to the daily life. So we started to train him from young how to regulate his emotion. That's really important for fathers who are here. And as fathers and parents, it's important for us to demonstrate good control and manage our emotions daily as well, to help them catch on. That's something I have to learn over the years. It's been tough because when I'm stressed at work, I realize that I will have less bandwidth and buffer to do so. That's why actually this year I'm on sabbatical, because I really need to reduce my bandwidth at work so that I can take a step back to really apply and practice what I know on the family. And that has really helped so much. Yeah, that's key for a lot of dads here. You know, you may be very busy at work, very stressful at work. That leaves very little room for you to equip yourself. So the bandwidth, the buffer is very important. Spark, the Society for the Promotion of ADHD Research and Knowledge, has been a big help to us. It's started off as a parent support group for parents with ADHD kids more than 20 years ago. And more recently, with Unlocking ADHD, UA and Spark are good partners now. It's been a great help, you know, to equip, encourage, and been a great avenue for us to contribute as well, to help create awareness and reach out to struggling parents and ADHDers themselves, be it children, be it teens, or even adult. Yeah, so it's a lifelong process. Partnership with school and educators is important. It's important to get teachers and educators to be on our side. We are very thankful that for John in primary school, you know, we work very closely with the school counselor and his teachers to equip them, provide them with really real life knowledge, you know, to add to their brief theoretical knowledge of special needs. Because as educators, you know, their training in NIE on special needs is very, very little, you know, very little that cuts across all kinds of special needs. So it's important for parents, we can equip ourselves so that we can help to equip the teachers, so that when we're not around with them in school, the teachers can be their advocates, you know, to watch over them and to help them. It's important to listen to our children as well, as what they say is often what they mean. I learned that a lot through my wife as well, especially for our ADHD kids. They just speak in their mind, you know. So there's no need for us to overanalyze or conclude that they are saying this because they're trying to find excuses to do something that they like. They literally speak their mind. So you got to take it wholesale, believe them, and work with them. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And as fathers, it's important also, especially if your wife is gentle, you think that you need to be the fierce one, to be the aggressive one, to take things into control. I would suggest that be cautious on that, because your aggression is likely to stir up your child's oppositional side and may break down your relationship with them. Yeah, especially for boys, they may get very oppositional, and if you're not careful, it can turn into ODD. Okay, they become defiant, they oppose everything that you say. Yeah, and that doesn't help to build their mental bricks when they face important decisions, especially. And last but not least, we need to be patient, we need to be flexible, we need to be affirming, approving, and to coach them step by step. It's a long-term process of daily coaching. Yeah, and I also learned my own, you know, I used to shake my head, you know, to show my disappointment, and that really hurts my boy. Yeah, I learned the hard way. I have to apologize to him and ask him to forgive me. Yeah, so showing our disappointment, be it through our facial expression, be it through our body language, will really break down and demolish their motivation. Yeah, so that is something very, very important. Yeah, so these are the few learnings. I will end off here so that the other dads will have more time to speak. But I just want to shout out to dads here, and I think it's important for dads to come together to support one another. A big shout out to Dads for Life as well, a movement that I've been involved since 2009. And because of my own journey, right, I'm very convicted in the fathering journey. So I thank the Dads for Life movement, a movement that I can write on to reach out to other dads as well. Yeah, and Dads for Life has recently started a special Dads for Life subgroup as well to help out with dads who have children of all kinds of special needs too. Yeah, so I think in the audience there are some guys who are from Dads for Life as well. So I just want to give a big shout out to them. So thank you very much for giving me some airtime. Hope to interact with you guys later on.
Yep. No, David. No, Frankie. To be honest, I think some of the you gave a very good overview, but I wanted to ask you to expand a little bit with regards to how your son got his diagnosis, and then and before that, how was it like, you know? And then why do you think that getting the diagnosis is really important for him as well as for the whole family?
I think diagnosis is important because we want to have some evidence to sort of help guide us on where we should focus on. Otherwise, ADHD can often be misconstrued as a behavioral issue or parental issue. You know, you didn't parent the child well, you know, you dote on them, you know, you didn't do this, you didn't do that. We need to convince even our own family members. It took us several years to convince our own family members, you know, our parents, our siblings and all that, because when we have family gatherings, right, sometimes they look at how John would misbehave, how he would do things so differently. It pains our heart sometimes because we know that we know a lot more, you know, than what others. So we have to equip ourselves so that we can explain, you know, to people what are the struggles that, you know, John is going through and what are the struggles that his parents are going through. So starting from family and then the school, and then subsequently if they, you know, are in other organizations or if they grow older when they work, they need to equip themselves so that they can explain themselves. So when they are young, the parents are their best advocates. Yeah. So if we don't equip ourselves, we don't diagnose them, we don't pick up knowledge and tips and strategies, there's no way we can become their advocates. So instead of advocating for them, we may suppress them even more, we may break them down even more, and that wouldn't help. Yeah. So at 6 was a good age because when you're too young, sometimes diagnosis may not be as easy or as accurate. So we thought at 6, prior to that, we were living overseas. So when we came back at 6, while he was attending K2, we thought it's a good time to diagnose him so that when we enter P1, we could have some black and white evidence so that we could, like, for example, have exam sort of privileges, an extension of time, so on and so forth. But more to also rally but more to rally around the teachers to equip them with the knowledge, telling them that we are not finding excuses or getting advantages for privileges for him, but to just help them, equip them to have an additional lens to watch over him so that when things happen, they have some background knowledge. Otherwise, especially for boys, right, they tend to be more disruptive in school, that everything is being tagged as misbehavior. Yeah, so I think that's the key for us in terms of diagnosis, not just to label him. I think some parents are afraid of labeling their children.
Exactly.
We are not afraid of labeling him because we think that we should be very open about understanding that ADHD is a neurological condition and it's likely to stay on in life. It's just that you need to learn how to manage it. You can still go on with life for sure. I said John is highly creative. He can do things that many other people can't do. It's just that a lot of times they just can't fit into the norm, into the societal norm, into the classroom norm, you know, so they get into a lot of struggles day to day. So we need to help prop them up. Diagnosis, medication, intervention, family management, parenting, all these things can help to prop our children up so that we give them a strong supporting structure to grow up with. And eventually when they are independent as adults, they will go on in life to support themselves and navigate their own lives accordingly.
Okay, thank you so much, Frankie. Then let's move to David Su. So I'll let you share about your stories.
Good evening to all of you. I have 3 children. They are in my 2 girls are in upper secondary and lower secondary respectively, and I have a son in primary school. So I noted that when my second daughter was in kindergarten and lower primary school, very often she would be in social situations where there was a difficulty taking on a different perspective, a slight rigidity in thinking. And also there were situations where the reaction to even what we would deem as something that offends us, but the reaction was very big. It was a very, very big reaction. So it was more this emotional dysregulation and the ability of thinking on a different social perspective, which gave a hint to us that something was different. We sent her for therapy classes and social thinking, but after a while I felt that if I don't have a proper diagnosis, I won't know how to actually manage this. ADHD did not occur to me at that time. I'd heard of it many, many years ago. I was neutral to the diagnosis. I know some people immediately poo-poo it and say that's a rubbish bag diagnosis. It doesn't exist. But ADHD is real. ADHD is real. People are wired that way. So I was open to it, and when the diagnosis came back, I said, all right, so at least now we have a clear answer that this is at least an underlying cause. I'd like to add this point also that I think if you send your child or if your loved one goes for assessment, you may sometimes find that there's also added diagnosis, and ADHD doesn't come alone. So there are many sufferers who have other co-conditions, and it is these co-conditions that can, I think that's what makes everybody's ADHD unique. One person's ADHD is not another person's ADHD. We are all unique in the co-conditions that come along. Every child is a unique child with unique personality, unique strengths, unique challenges, their circumstances in the family, the school, what they face. So one child's ADHD is not another child's ADHD. They're co-conditions, and that makes that adds a different flavor to it. Yeah. So when we got the diagnosis and we showed it to the primary school teachers, we got stunned silence. We actually asked to ask for help from the allied educator, but being of the more inattentive type, they basically, though she's not someone throwing tables and chairs, so it's like to them there's no problem. So trying to read up about it and trying to look very independently at the data, trying to remove my emotion from it, I looked at the Ministry of Health guidelines, and they're saying that, well, therapy can help some. Medications alone appears to help more, but probably medications and therapy, there is some further bump up in treatment. And I know different people have different views on medication treatment. I decided based on this and to be open to it, but I decided to start medications only on test days, in primary 5 and primary 6. We weren't sure how it was going to go. After the PSLE, she got a score that could get her into an IP program, but we said, well, if we got this, maybe we'll just take the O-level route. There's nothing wrong with that. Just have a checkpoint at 4 years. And then we wrote into school. Oh yeah, so in primary school, we also wrote in and asked for accommodations, and it was accepted. It was accepted. Some teachers were very willing to try and help, but we know that in a classroom of 36, and with the allied educators sometimes themselves stretched, there's only so much they can do. And also individual teachers, also everybody has their own bandwidth. Yeah. So accommodations at the PSLE got into, we decided to go down the O-level track. And then we wrote to the school, to the secondary school, to tell them, this is what she has. These are the accommodations she had. This is what helps her around the class. Please update us. Anything we can do to help you to understand the condition or to help her. Because in my understanding, my reading, the parents, so always the parents, the treating doctor, like let's say a psychiatrist is giving, or psychologist, they're giving medications and therapy, and the school, especially in Singapore, a school predominates a lot in a child's life, right? And sometimes it becomes even the dominant point of conversation in a parent-child interaction. More on that later. But so that trying to get the school to close the loop, because she's away for about 7-8 hours a day. So you want to know how she's doing in school, how she's responding to medications, are things okay? Is there anything we can help with? Is there something the school can feedback to us so that we can understand what's going on? Unfortunately, well, the pandemic hit. It's adolescence, and I think the challenge in the school program in secondary school is also it ramps up in terms of the difficulty level. So it was difficult. Some teachers did try to help. Some teachers were probably not quite sure how to help even tell them. But like I said, I think to be fair, it is a class size of 30 plus to 40. And it was pandemic. So everybody was basically scrambling to try to make the best of the situation. I think in Singapore, because school takes up a lot of the time, and it appears to be a very dominant point in conversation, it inherently, education obviously always comes into the conversation in how we relate to our ADD children, yeah? And the triggers always tended to come around schoolwork. So if on long holidays, right, no schoolwork, everything's okay, no pressure, everything's cool at home. Of course, sometimes easy play up of emotions and big emotions, but there is no trigger otherwise for agitation, for being upset as much. So a lot, schoolwork probably plays a very, very big part, I must say. Medications wise, it came to the point where we decided that in secondary school, it had to be something to be taken every day, something to be taken every day. I think one of the questions that was asked, that was sent through to the panelists before this, that was compiled, was whether medications can solve everything. I think medications help some in terms of, like, say, the focus and all, but it's also, it's how parents create that environment at home. Now, by no means am I saying I'm an expert on this, but in looking back retrospectively that things I've done wrong and how some things happen to be right, I think it's a lot about, I echo what Frankie has said in my conversations with Chia Meng and David, that a lot is creating that very listening environment, empathetic environment at home. And yes, it's hard because you obviously we do not want to condone bad behavior, but we probably have to give a little bit more, for want of a better word, slack in terms of saying, okay, so maybe this child is not trying to be just bad, there's a possibility, but maybe I have to consider if there's something else. After all, this child is wired this way. Now, I know it is a very fine line and not easy to walk that, right? Because we obviously want to discipline our children. We love our children. I think every parent that is here is because you are deeply concerned for your child and your loved one, and you want them to grow up well and to be good members that contribute to society. And obviously at that moment when you see, if you see a child who's appearing to push back against your advice, which gets harder as you enter the teens, and sometimes we would end up saying things that we later regret, or you're thinking, maybe that wasn't the moment to say it. That wasn't the best time to say it. That wasn't the best way to say it. And sometimes probably the therapist will say, unfortunately, we may not be the best person to say it. I know it's hard, right? Because you could say, well, I read up and I can tell you, but if you don't want to take it at that moment, it's hard. So we have to take a very long-term view. You have to take a very long-term view for a child because they are wired like this. Nobody, I think, wants to be born with it. And I know sometimes there'll be days that it seems really, really difficult. And the child will say, well, I know I don't, children, if you read about, talk about that, there is a lot of associated anxiety, low mood disorder associated with it, and sense of probably feeling that what's wrong with me and all. But hold out for them that, I think, by what we can do, that's why I say be open to considering medications, and that's because of the data. Again, this is statistical. So what works broadly statistically is more likely going to work for the individual. Not saying therefore that it is immediately must work, but more likely will statistically. Yet each child is unique. Create the environment, create that environment that supports, read widely to understand, and then yet know that some of these measures that work for other people may not work for a child, but you can at least, you have a whole framework of things you can try to sort in. And remember, your child has ADHD, but your child is not ADHD. Your child has ADHD, but your child is not the condition. The challenge for us as parents is, especially fathers, is we're very task oriented. You have this, I'm here to solve it for you, and we want to fix it, obviously, because we love our child, right? And sometimes we get so task oriented, but it dominates the relationship until it actually clouds over the relationship that you and I know we love our child. But to that child, the moment just seems to be, well, it's a task that you're trying to solve. Right? It's a task that you're trying to solve. It may be well-meaning, but there's a possibility that we go overboard. Say, okay, let's get all information. I know it's it, and then information dump, and then, well, that's take a very, very long-term view.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's something that as a volunteer, I see a lot of parents going through. They stop working together with the child as a team, and the child becomes the problem, becomes that entity that needs to be fixed. It's instead of, the child being a human being as their children, and working together as a team to deal with the future. So I'm going, let's move on. We have lots of questions coming in already, but we'll get to them as much as we can. I cannot promise we will answer all of them, but please upvote the questions that if you find the questions very relevant and you want them answered, then we will try to answer those that are being most upvoted. There are also some questions that came in during the registrations. We will also pick some of those questions there that are relevant for the fathers to answer. But we'll go to Chia Meng for now to talk about. Tell us your story. How your child came about with. How you discovered and what are you doing and what are some of the journey and then your struggles and some of the interesting stories. And we want to keep this lighthearted, so feel free to share, and then other fathers can also jump in anytime if you want. Let's not take this too seriously for now. All right, go ahead, Chia Meng. Hi, Chia Meng, I need you to unmute yourself.
Good afternoon. Yeah, sorry, this is new for me. Anyway, great to see all the panelists there again. We share a lot in common, and even though we are in different society, because I'm actually based in the US, so it's slightly different, but the common thread is there that we all share the fact that these are our kids. So before I go on, I think one word that my daughter's teacher used a lot, and it helps, is that we're not giving them a slack. We're giving them this concept called grace. And the greater the difficulty they have in dealing with what happens in their social life and school life is indication of how much grace we want to give them. And there were some questions that were asked ahead of time about one of the parents saying, looking at a kid who's really acting out, and because we are an Asian society, we cannot condone that. A lot of what I say is strictly suggestions, because I have to work with a different system where, in this part of the world, personal liberties are important. And when my daughter was born, what I noticed was we try to wrap her up, keep her warm. She would just kick that swaddling cloth around because she already breathed the air in this part of the world where everything is personal freedom and liberty. So, but the fact is, that's why I really applaud Moon for starting this, because ADHD in the Asian society is kind of different. There's this confusion mentality of conformity, the greater good. Yes, those things are important, and those things will come in as they grow up. But the word that we kind of haven't mentioned is this concept called executive function. And as kids' brains develop, they will gain the executive function after a certain age. And the teenage years, and I feel for David. Me and him, we're daughters, and at a certain part of this life called puberty, the hormones kick in, and man, is a roller coaster is a mild description of what he's going through. But back to the point is, think of it as not trying to condone a behavior, but think of it as your child actually acting out because they're asking for help. And if you start thinking of it that way, life becomes a lot easier, because truly their acting out is a sign, it's a cry for help. So that's one thing that I find, like even Frankie was saying, you give them space, you try to understand them, and empathy. That's the word I like. As for the path to diagnosis, I have a single daughter, so in a way it's good, yet in a way it's not as good. My situation is a little bit different in the sense that we do not have a support system here because we are first generation immigrants. So like they have all said, you build your so-called your village, like either church or even the teachers that you work with, your therapists, your professional support team. You literally have to find your team, and finding the right one is important. But what we did in our situation, like Ian is saying, okay, how did we come about this diagnostic process? My kid is what we call twice exceptional, in the sense that, even in kindergarten and everything, it was obvious that she wasn't different, but they identify her as so-called gifted, in the sense that, she seems to pick up stuff fast. But at their age, as a kindergartner, when you're not trying to rely on executive function to actually, build on a project and, having more problem-solving needs, she just needs more stimulation. So what happened in our case was we actually had to have her tested in where we come from. The testing is a fairly laborious process. It occurs over 2 long sessions, and you literally take 2 days out of school just to get her tested, to actually confirm that she's gifted before they will actually accept her in the public school system as into a gifted program. So that was identified, and it was a blessing in a way, but it sort of changed the process along for her, because it's like a lot of parents, when they start to actually have problems paying attention, they get so-called hyperactive, then it sort of clouds the diagnosis and clouds the diagnostic process a lot. So there's this concept we call Dabrowski's hyper-excitability in the gifted kid, that sort of muddles up the process to see, okay, is this ADHD or is this actual part of the gifted trait? And they call it, they have actually a theory behind it. It's called hyper-excitability. So, and we always believe that, even if she actually had ADHD, and like Frankie was saying, at a certain age, there's no way to diagnose ADHD because that's just because they're kids. And the clinical psychologist was not willing to actually go to the ADHD diagnostic process until she's more mature. So we're feeling that, even if she was ADHD, we wanted her to be able to adapt and to find ways to manage, because eventually that's what it is. So we were doing what we can to help her. And I like all parents, we didn't want to give her so-called, in here they call the there's a system here called the Drug Enforcement Agency, is the DAA type 1 medication, because we're all worried about what sort of effect the medication will do for her in the long run. So if there are parents who feel they do not want to medicate the child, we totally understand that, but we just, a word of caution, if the medication is needed, it is going to be needed. So we did delay the medical part. We tried all sorts of adjunct therapy, including, even FDA approved system that is non-medical that actually helps, but, it really slowed down the process until the proverbial thing called a pandemic, when everything hits the fan. And that's when her ADHD came into full presentation. And to cut a long story short, a lot of what the people in the chat questions have raised and brought about, we've kind of been through it. And even though a lot of stories that you're hearing today seems heartbreaking at times, it is a journey and it will actually get better. And just hang in there and have faith.
All right. Thank you so much, Chia Meng, for sharing. And now we come to David. David Sim. We have two Davids today, so I have to be a bit more specific.
Hi.
Right, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Hi, I'm David here. Yuan just wanted it to be easygoing and all that. So I was just thinking whether the current rules with 5 household members can extend to a brotherhood of men like that to go out for durians or something after this.
Yeah, we should.
Okay, I'm David here. After listening to these dads here, I can tell you I am really nowhere, or rather I'm just right at the beginning of this long journey. And really to meet these guys is really a blessing because my wife and I, we have struggled a lot with my son's diagnosis. I have 2 children. Yuan, I think somewhere there's some beautiful slides and all the kind of stuff, right? Is it there? Ah, cool. All right. Okay, so this is my son, Alexander. Okay, all right. This is these 2 photos are taken quite recently. We enjoy a lot of activities together, but don't let these photos fool you. Actually, it took me quite a lot to get to this stage. Next. This is the family. One of the activities we love to do is to go on the Skyline Luge. I have a daughter who is 13, and then of course Alexander there, and then my wife Angie. My wife has been really not only a supporter but really a critical friend, someone who really pulls me to the side and say, "Hey, why you say like that? You know, or do you think you should, you know, that kind of thing." I think that's really important for your spouse. On the right is one of my early photos with my son. I think at this stage he was not diagnosed yet, and like any dad, you know, you want to teach your children cycling, swimming, so on and so forth. I mean, in Singapore, there's only so much you can do, right? So, but it was through all these activities that we started to realize that he's quite different. And next. You see a whole splash of photos and all that. This is Alexander just over the last year or so, right? Snorkeling, swimming. National Day this year, we did 56 kilometers over about 3 days. I bring him out kayaking, and we went up the high elements at I think it's the place at Bedok. It has not been easy to reach this stage. Yeah. And a little bit about how we got here. Now, Alexander, we started to suspect that he had some issues right around 3 or 4 years old. But then the thing is that we did not know whether is this a growing up thing or is this a special needs thing. Although there were some times where he did show some areas of concern. For example, when he interacted with people, he would go really close and he would say inappropriate things. Like, you know, I will still remember we were in a lift and then he went in and got really quite close to a rather large lady and he would go, "You are fat." You know, so it's like, oh gosh, you know. Now, remember I have a daughter before him. So, I mean, my eldest did not do these things, you know, and certainly she did not go close to someone. But it wasn't until he started to exhibit signs of fear in going to the childcare. that got me and my wife concerned. So we approached the childcare teacher after a few weeks of trying to get him out from the cab, and literally had to pull him out and put him into the childcare. Just to let you know, I mean, he did not start that way. I mean, he loved the childcare. He was really happily going in. Then there was a shift. Then when we engaged the childcare teacher then told us that he has been naughty, right? He's very lively. He walks around, he touches things, he talks incessantly, and basically he doesn't follow instructions. He asks questions just out of the blue, and so on and so forth. And as a result of that, they would punish him. They would just put him one corner, do your own thing, or they would ask him to apologize, and so on and so forth. So he is reacting out of fear and confusion. And that was when we honestly got quite upset with the childcare, and we actually questioned them, why you didn't tell us, and then then we could have done something. Now, the irony is that in my line of work, I work with a lot of children, both primary school and teens, and on many occasions, I would actually advise parents, if you're in doubt that your child may have special needs, then send them for diagnosis. And in working with parents, sometimes I would also come across cases where children were genuinely ill-behaved. Okay, so on my end, I would think that Alexander was misbehaving. This is a lively boy, and I should teach him something. So so there was this mix of whether is it part of the child's development or is it not. But then when the childcare teacher started to surface this, and then we started to shift our lens to look at it, to say that could it be, yeah, that was when we started to sensitize ourselves to the fact that maybe my own child could have this special needs. After all these years of telling parents, here it is, David, you have got to walk the talk, I suppose. That was when we started to have that bit of perception. And then so that's when we started to look at him in different social contexts, and like during certain things, like doing certain things like cycling, even swimming. When he is with children of his age group, he is consistently different, right? No matter what you do, pull him aside, bribe him with ice cream, candy, whatever. In fact, that makes it worse. He is consistently different. You try to let him take a nap and then go for swimming, maybe he will swim a bit faster. Just catch up a little bit, can or not? Cannot. All right, so he would swim, and then he would stop, and then he would look at the sky, and then he would sink. So things like that, cycling wise, yeah, he will be easily distracted. And when you push him with a little bit of a rigor, he would cry. He would not be able to handle his emotions, or the change of emotions rather. That rigor doesn't do good things to him. So that was when, so from one thing led to another, we got really concerned. So I find myself really having to walk the talk. So at 5 years old, we decided to go to the polyclinic route and got him a referral to NUH, Child Development Unit. And it was at that point that we saw the psychiatrist. And so from 5 to 6 years old, he went for therapy and diagnosis sessions, and he was diagnosed with ASD. Now, they were not able to diagnose ADHD yet, because here you need to be at least 7 years old before they can actually diagnose you for ADHD. That is partly also due to the age appropriateness of the diagnosis. So, so we got his diagnosis for ASD, and that was really helpful. because we got it before he went into primary 1. So when he got the school and we were able to furnish the teachers and AEDs with the report and recommendation. Then when he went into primary 1, which is this year, we immediately got him, went on the bandwagon and got him to be evaluated for ADHD. And he actually got the diagnosis. And currently he is on medication. Partly also for me, in my line of work, I have seen that how medication can be effective in helping the child manage that, especially in settings where the parents are not around. So, so that in short is my journey with Alexander. On my end, I do a lot of activities with him. You know, this activity thing, it started way before his diagnosis. And in fact, I'm quite ashamed to say that it was sometimes during these activities that, you know, I will show my frustration. I will show anger. Sometimes it's frustrated with him, but more than anything else, it's just frustrated with myself. You know, why is it that I can't handle these kind of things? And it sometimes can get quite bad. You know, I just push him aside and then I just walk away and just kind of like lose it. But then when he got his diagnosis, I felt very, very bad. I felt, I don't know, bad, I suppose is an understatement. I felt so ashamed of myself that, and here I am, you know, his father, his dad, his protector, the only one that can protect him. And the only one that I suppose, together with my wife, can empower him. And yet I'm not doing these things. And like what many of the daddies have shared, you know, it's a neurological condition. He's wired that way. You know, he is like, you know, he's born with maybe glasses that has a yellow lens. No matter how you shout at him to say that, no, it's not yellow. It's, you know, the world has so many colors, but he only sees yellow. So, so I decided to use these activities to use it as a platform for me to engage with him again more constructively as a dad, as someone who is there to really empower him and to embrace him for who he is. And I use this platform very actively, actually, to praise him. All right. Yes, to gently nudge him, to push him, and really to praise him, to affirm him that, you know, Dad's got your back, man. You know, yeah. And as I was preparing for this talk, you know, I look at him. I really have him to thank. I really have my son to thank for showing me this deeper dimension of parenting. I mean, it's one thing to parent a normal kid. You know, it's like, you know, you pay for this, go through that, sit for this exam, and clap hand, you get into this. Yay! But I guess it takes a different parent, you know, to really you know, reach deep and reach down to your heart, to really parent and to tell your child that I love you regardless of what. So it's taking Alexander to show me this, and it's so far with that perspective change, it has really helped me a lot, me and my wife, really. And of course, with the perspective from all these dads here, really very, very deeply grateful for this. Yeah. Okay. So that's where I am today. Yeah, with Alexander.
This has been extremely informative and very, very. This is, I mean, I couldn't help but shed one manly tear listening from all the fathers here. Because of all the things that you are going through and sharing so vulnerably, right? So and then these are all very, very unique point of view that we don't often hear, because apparently men are half and tough and we struggle and silently and alone, right? But that's, we don't have to. I mean, we are all here together to help our children, your children at least, navigate the world better in the future. So I'm sure that besides all the struggle and the pain and the frustration, not just at your children, but also at yourself, what are some of the interesting and what are some of the strengths that you see in your children that you'd like to highlight or share? Who wants to go first? Maybe David, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So my son Alexander, he has a strong sense of empathy. Really, you know, he's the kind of you know, we'll come home from a busy day at work. We'll just sit down, and you know, in this current day and age where you know we have work from home and he's HBLing in another room. You know, he will come with a cup of water and he say, "Hello, Daddy. This is a drink for you." All right, and whenever we go out, and just in fact last night, you know, he has this big piece of chicken chop, and then he would just cut 2 pieces, and he will give one to mommy, and he will give one to daddy. Really, you know, it just came from him. He is also a problem solver, so we just came back, and one of the chairs lost a screw. He quickly found a screw, and he fixed up his little tool set, and he screwed the chair back, and then he's wonderful with Legos and so on. So he's really actively always looking for solutions to an issue, so to speak. Yeah. So that's the kind of strength I see in him. Yeah, and of course, with his ASD side, he tells you things as it is, lah. So you just have to. Yeah,
that's true.
Yeah.
And then, who else? Frankie, go ahead. You don't have to have my permission, you know, just go and then share.
Yeah, I'm happy to share that John is very caring. You know, he always gives his best to his brothers and even his friends. You know, he will save up money. He will buy very good gifts for his friends, for his 2 brothers. When he goes to the library, all my boys, they love to go to the library. You know? So when he goes to the library, he will borrow books for his brothers first. Grab all the books, all the DVDs that he thinks his brother would like. Then he'll go and search for his own. You know, it just has a very, very caring heart. You know, very spontaneous, just throw himself out. You know, sometimes vulnerable, but you know, it's just so lovely to see him wanting to offer his best despite his own struggle. So what heartens me is he has been, you know, understanding his condition for more than 10, 11 years now. So nowadays, somehow he's being led to reach out to other of his peers in school whom he see are struggling and who are still undiagnosed. Their parents got no clue at all. So sometimes he will come back home and he will tell my wife and I, hey, you should go and reach out to so-and-so's parents, you know, let them know that their son or their daughter actually has special needs, ADHD or ASD, you know. So it's good. So as they grow, you know, they learn, even they struggle on their own, they see that in their friends. So that is very heartening, you know. So they have a heart, they like I said, we need to empathize with them. They don't want to be lousy, they don't want to underperform. They don't want to be poor in sort of motivation and perform, but they just can't help it. So once we empathize with them, we can journey with them better and continue to prop them up as and when they need, learning new ways to communicate with them as they grow, especially. You know, sometimes you got to just tell them that I'm here for you. When you need help, just come. You know, when we know that it's sensitive, you know, at a certain age, it's hard for us to go near to them. And we also want to just keep reminding them that we are here for them. Yeah, so it's amazing to see him struggling, and yet he's reaching out to journey with others who are struggling like him or even worse than him. Sometimes he will stay back late after school just to have a meal with his friends, or you know, take a longer route in the bus just to reach out to a friend, or to talk over the phone with a friend late into the night because the friend is depressive and is suicidal.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay. And David?
Yes, my daughter is actually very spontaneous, very creative, very humorous, and I agree. That's something I've heard over and over again. A lot of ADHDers, if you realize and you talk to them, you realize they're very empathetic. they probably picked up a lot more about how other people are suffering, because probably they have been on the receiving end of being misunderstood themselves. And we have to recognize their strengths. They do have strengths. We have to recognize that. And if we force them to be what they're not, it is, we ourselves cannot stand being forced to be what we're not. So imagine if we try to force that on our children. So if we take a very long-term view that they have strengths, how do we play to these strengths? How do we emphasize that we acknowledge these strengths and they grow to trust us more rather than seeing us as the adversary? I think we would probably be in a better position to support them. Remember, it's a very long game, okay? We cannot undo the wiring. And we often look for short-term solutions, but we are actually trying to, you know what is actually amazing about this? If you know your child has ADHD and you tell them this and you tell them why they have this, you've actually explained to them already how their brain works. You and I work with adults every day who probably don't even know how their brain works, don't even know why they want to do something but they can't, or they're falling short. So by actually understanding what this is, and by scaffolding and saying, look, we know now this is how the brain is wired, this is what tends to happen. And if you recognize the pattern, when you do this, you get distracted, you do this, you get distracted. Now, your role as a parent then is to very sympathetically, in a very empathizing manner, saying, all right, we know this, let's try to set in place, okay? It doesn't mean that you immediately solve everything, but you have given them all the tools. And these are the toolbox that they are supposed to bring with life. You're not going to solve it immediately, but you're unlocking it for them. So that they understand, like, this is how my brain thinks. This is how I'm wired. They're already one up from being in a position to not knowing, understanding themselves, correct? So if parents have that view, long-term, play to strengths, create the environment and say, okay, we know this is going on and we have a clear reason, and you know what, be very, very sympathetic. And I think as parents, when we actually say, hey, you know what, I messed up there, and you know, these things even happen to us. I'm not therefore saying that ADHD is just one of a spectrum of forgetfulness, but you're trying to say that, you know what, this happens to other people too, so don't beat yourself up so much. And you see, even daddy sometimes forgets and things like that. So that's okay. At least we try to put in place a structure to prevent these things happening. And there's so many examples of people who, having built these coping mechanisms, have gone on to do extremely well in life and fit in very well. And because they tend to be very empathetic and very listening, they will actually gravitate to people who are of the same personality. They will find friends. But if you say you've got to stick with those people and you've got to be like that, it's like Einstein's quote about trying to make a fish climb a tree. It's not going to work. All right. Of course, so we just try to say, this is the way we think. All right, society tends to be thinking like that, but let's try to make the most of what we can do with this. And you give them that toolbox for them to bring for the rest of their lives. We're not going to solve it immediately now, today or next week, but you're trying to say, this is in place. Mommy, daddy, the entire family is here to support you. And let's understand in this journey together. At least the family is there to support, and they have that confidence in you.
And Chia Meng, do you, what are some of the strengths and some of the interesting things that you see in your daughter?
Yeah, basically, it's good to hear all the other dads talk about what they are doing, and like it's very cliche, but the word is called paying it forwards. So Moon Lake is started something back home, and what she and you guys are all doing is actually creating a chain of event that will pass on to the next generation. And you know, like what David said, and the two Davids actually, and Frankie, the kids will model what we are doing. And like these three dads are showing them, what's the good way, what's empathy, what's giving people space, grace, understanding. They are modeling it towards their own friends. And this is going to basically snowball into a positive wave down the road for society at large, because like the 4 A's I was telling Moonlight at the beginning, a lot of it is actually achievement. When they actually make it through as an adult who learn stuff that David Su just talked about, they will be super contributors to society because they are so good at multitasking and everything. And the other Frankie and David Sim said, the kids are super generous. For some reason, I cannot know why, but they're just very generous beings. And my daughter has she basically, she loves little animals and everything, and it's part of that asynchronous development where the emotional part is a little bit behind the intellect. So give them the space and they will flourish.
Thank you so much. You all of you kind of made my day. I'm actually tearing up right now to hear this as a person with ADHD, because because a lot of the struggles that your children have is what I had in the past. For over 30-something years, there was no diagnosis, and I wish things were. There were more access in the past for me, but I'm glad that they have parents like you that are so involved. And there is something that I just want to give a very highlight some of the similarities that I hear across all the fathers here, is that from a father's perspective, I keep seeing this point where your job as a father, as a parent, is to make sure that the children will be able to be self-sufficient enough and be a good member of the society, so that they can contribute and be a useful person in the society in the future, and stop relying on you, and that they can be independent and thrive towards the future. So this is a very different perspective from maybe some parents out there, and I think that is something to applaud and to feel happy about, that all of you have this thought process and to take things without being emotional, and to just keep moving forward step by step and a little bit. So because you have done so much for your children, right? So now I want to ask about yourself. So what are you doing for yourself to take care of to self-care and to take care of yourself so that you don't get burnt out? And then maybe some tips, quick tips. We don't have a lot of time. I hope to go through more questions quickly.
Maybe I start first.
Yes.
I mentioned my sabbatical earlier, right?
Yeah.
So one way for fathers or for men, who tend to put in a lot of time and effort at the work front, is to pace yourself. 2 years ago, I asked for sabbatical. It was a paid sabbatical. I asked for 3 months. They gave me 6 months. But even though I went away for 6 months, because it was a paid sabbatical, the workload was still on my shoulders. So when I came back to work, I felt that it didn't really help me as much. So this year, I bit the bullet and I asked for a non-paid sabbatical, and it was helpful as well. It was timely for me to sort of plan it such a way for leadership succession planning as well. So that helped for me to hand over my roles and responsibility fully, and I could take a step away from work fully. And I must say that it's really helpful. So for those dads who are here listening, if it has come to a point where you feel that you are really stretched, you don't have the bandwidth, you don't have the buffer to even reach out to your spouse, let alone your ADHD child, it's time for you to make some sacrifices. Yeah, work it through with your spouse and allow that to happen. Yeah, so let me encourage you to do that, and it will be more than you can imagine. Yeah, and also don't see it as a problem for you, especially when you have difficulty in your fathering journey, and then you start to see that your marriage is suffering and all that. Especially if your marriage is suffering, dig deeper into it. It may be a blessing that with with a difficult child, it would help you to actually align with your spouse, tag team with your spouse even more. Yeah, work it to your advantage. Yeah, strengthen your marriage. It will help strengthen your fathering and your parenting journey. So that's my encouragement for you.
All right. Next.
I totally agree and would like to echo Frankie. Really, at the early stages when my boy started to exhibit all these traits, and we were just going through this whole stage of this whole phase of denial, disappointment, and trying to embrace the whole situation. It was tough on my wife and I, more on me, because I find that I'm so lost in trying to help my boy and so on. Yeah, I mean, to the extent of really, quarreling at home and trying to make sense of things. And like what Frankie said, I mean, I came to the realization that I think the best thing he needs is a strong marriage. It's a loving home, and all these squabbles and trying to, it's really not helping. So that's when we, I think for myself, more than anything else, I have to, let the ego go away, and just take some time off to be with the wife. I mean, even today we go for long drives, or we go for meals or breakfast together, and just our own time just to talk things out. And yes, really it's quite difficult to even right now to really remove all these shells and all that, but I find that I have to do it, because otherwise it's not helping anyone. So that's one, for the marriage. You have to be honest with each other, and like what Frankie said again, play tag, and see that it is something that we both do together. The other thing that I do will be sports that I do on my own. I do a bit of HIIT, some of my own me time early in the day, and also get my kids involved. So that's kind of like keeps me sane, both at work, and here at home as well. So that's a bit on the me care side. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that question, because it's, as I thought about it, I said the very things that we need for self-care is actually modeling the same things that they need as ADHDers, right? Early sleep, regular exercise, healthy diet, everything our moms and dads told us when we were kids, and maybe decided to neglect, try to push through in the teen years and 20 odd years old. Then when you reach our age in the late 40s to 50s, you're like, maybe we should do all that. And actually it's doing all these things and telling them, it's actually modeling it for them. Yeah, so I take walks with my daughter. In fact, in some ways, if she probably did not have it, I may, and let's say she was just in school and doing her thing and all that, I'll probably actually, in that sense, spend less time with her. But because of that, I dare say in some ways it has brought us closer. Of course, there are points of conflict, but I understand her deeper than probably if she didn't have this. So, ADHD is there for a reason. There are many ADHDs there for a reason, and you may not perceive it as a gift. There'll be days you want to rip your hair out and say, can I give the gift back to the giver, please? But it's play to its strengths. There are strengths, there are things that can come of it. And by seeing that as a parent, the first thing to manage is, number one, your emotions, your perspective. And if you're able to do that and you don't view your child as a problem, I think they will pick up on that. Kids sometimes forget what we say, but they'll never forget how you make them feel. Yeah. So, so exercise with them, and you're modeling it for them also. Say, hey, you know what? If my schedule's so packed and I'm gonna stay out on my device, of course I'm gonna sleep late, and tomorrow it's gonna be a different kind of me than if I try to say, hey, you know what? I think I just got to put down my device now, get early sleep, and it happens to me. So But it's just that with your condition, it's going to be super ramped up. So let's try and avoid that, shall we? Now, it doesn't mean that because of this, it's always going to work out. But like I said, you're teaching them coping mechanisms. This is their toolbox. You're showing them how they think. They even understand far more about their personalities than people without ADHD. They understand far deeper than you realize. And because of that, you're saying, okay, now you know so much. Let's see how we can play to this. Okay. And yeah, just you're journeying with them. Just help them, modeling it for them. And I agree. Definitely, when they feel probably that we don't view them as a problem, but you're working together with them, like, hey, you know what? Let's walk together. I think somebody asked about sports for boys. Sometimes, of course, team sports are nice for a bit of social, but they prefer a bit more one-to-one because they find like interacting with some people a bit hard. You know what? A lot of the solo sports are really, really good. You look at Michael Phelps, and running is extremely good. Aerobics, you know, there's so many sports available now. There's so many options. I think the challenge is always, if let's say the child has some also gross motor dysfunction like dyspraxia, which are all the co-attendant diagnoses, that can make it a bit more intimidating and difficult. But as you do it for them, in fact, as you do it with them and you break it down for them, it probably makes the task less fearful, and say, hey, you know what? Let's do this together. And as parents, if you do it together with them, I think it'll draw you closer and just give you more opportunities to chat. You'll be amazed what they will want to share with you when they dare to talk to you.
Hi, how about you, Chia Meng? What do you do for self-care?
Is like I'm gonna echo what the parents say. I'm a copycat. So anyway, treating the kid more, and I'm not even Christian, but using a Christian concept, treat the kid like she's actually a blessing, and you'll find great rewards. So for us is to actually kind of channel. It's like they have to channel what is their calling and their, you know, whatever drives them. So if you channel that, it's going to help. So in my case, because I've been vegetarian for many years, and my daughter, we went to a trip once at a time when she was starting to actually learn about stuff, and there was a buffet, the international buffet, and they had this thing called Serrano ham, which is a very highly sought after Spanish ham. As a, you know, they have a station where they cut it, and they were hanging a pig's leg upside down, and my poor daughter just couldn't stand it, and you know, for sure she wanted to be a vegetarian after that. So, and I have what I call a mixed marriage, in the sense that my wife is like me, she's Asian, but she loves a steak. So my job is to basically cook. So you know, there were times where I taught her how to do fried rice, and she loved it. You know, all vegetarian stuff, and you know, so a lot of it is just, you know, finding what drives her, and you know, it gave me a chance to actually get involved with school activities with friends. I'm the soccer dad, so to speak. In the US, it goes soccer mom. I'm the one. My wife works about 40 miles away from home, so I'm the one near her. So I'm the one. I tell the, you know, so-called patients. I basically tell the people I work with, hey, my job here is a hobby. If my daughter is sick, you know, I'm sorry, but you know, she comes first. So that helps, because like they were saying, you know, you get to actually spend time with her. And you know, and when things were really bad during the pandemic, I don't know, can you screen share that Minecraft thing? The image on the Minecraft, the thing. You know, there's an image, but basically, you know, when they were saying creating that scaffolding, the structure, in order to bring her back into, you know, giving them that structure. Basically, I ended up researching all the stuff that she really enjoyed at that time during pandemic when school is down, and she is a Minecraft kid. So basically, you know, in order to give her so-called a reward and allowance system. This is what I created with the help of the psychologist I work with. And we give her sort of a weekly timetable. We use a Minecraft terminology, like if something going bad, she has fallen into the void, and then also stuff, you look at what your kid needs, and you actually become part of her worldview. And that, in a way, it was interesting for me, and it also gives her, she knows that we are trying to help her. So, just channeling whatever, what's the word, the Chinese word, they say, 危机, right? Every crisis is an opportunity. So, take everything with a smile and just go with the flow. And, like the other day, let's say, hey, it's okay to fail. And let the kid know we make mistakes, and then we just find the next way out.
Okay, it seems that the way that all of you go about with your self-care is basically doing healthy activities together with your child and family, and to build the bond, and also to help your children become more self-sufficient and more resilient to face the world together. All right, so I think we have a little bit of time. I'm going to ask some questions here. Hopefully we get to answer them very quickly. There's this very interesting question that someone asked. There's two questions that I want to ask. The first is, this person asked about they have difficulty accepting that this is ADHD or anything is a neurobiological condition. And it seems like it's more of an attitude problem, and it looks more like a laziness. And then as a parent, they are struggling and fighting very difficult themselves to believe the children who has ADHD or consider it as an attitude problem. So from what I hear just now, from what you have shared, you guys have mentioned a lot about believing your children, working with them to build scaffolding and whatnot. So what would you say to this parent? Yep, go ahead.
If an analogy I found that's really useful when we talked about with the first psychologist about giving her medication, but imagine that if your kid has a vision problem and he needs to wear glasses, are you going to deny them the pair of spectacles they need? If you look at it as something that's organic and it's not something, then ADHD doesn't become a disorder. It is just something they need to get them to the next step. Don't think of it as them trying to be disobedient and all the baggage that comes with it. It is just a stepping stool. Just like a person needs a crutch or whatever. They may not need a crutch later on, but if they broke their feet, I gotta tell them you got to limper along without a crutch, without a cast. Think of it that way, and you feel a lot better.
Good point. Good point.
Hi. In my line of work, it's quite common, especially with parents that have young children, and I find that they come in about two groups. One who willingly accept and would go along the route of getting the child diagnosed. More commonly would be the ones that would deny and to say that, look, it's just growing up, it's just being one, and he will grow out of it. What I would say is that if you consistently get this feedback from people that work with your children, with your child, and you yourself can see, I mean, if you spend time with your child and in social settings, and you consistently see that your child is different, all right, I think it would be wise to at least send your child for some preliminary diagnosis or what, if nothing else, at least to rule it out. Okay, I mean, it's just like, I mean, let's say you find something growing somewhere in your limb or in some part of your body, you would want to find out what is that thing, right? So if it's not for anything else, at least you to rule it out. Whether is this generally a discipline issue, then I'll go along that route to say that, okay, maybe he needs more routine, he needs to sleep a bit early, he needs to eat right. But if it's really a special need, like what Chia Meng shared, like if he really needs glasses, then are you really going to deny him? You see, so yeah, so just get the professionals to have a look. It won't take you a lot of time, but at least you know where to help your child. Yeah.
And then one last question before we end would be a lot of parents send in questions about all kinds of behavioral problems. It's ADHD, right? Hashtag ADHD moments, yeah. So, and there are some displaying dishonest behavior. There are some lying. There are some very oppositional. Some just break down, refusing to listen to their parents. Parents are struggling to get to work together with their children as a team. What can you say and then let's say if a child is having an anxiety breakdown or an emotional breakdown, what would you recommend for them? And also if they are displaying very oppositional behaviors like dishonesty, stealing, hiding their homework, taking money to go and buy stuff without permission, what would you say? Do you have any suggestions to share?
Maybe a quick one to mention. Not something that can easily be sorted out here, I guess. I guess the behavioral issues are the surface issues. Yeah, so we need to peel off the behavioral issues. We can manifest in 101 forms, right? So if we have the knowledge, we accept that our child is different, then we can peel off the surface areas, go long haul, dig deeper into coaching them at their heart level and the character level. So you may need to create structures at home. For those of you, you have your own family values that you hold on to. You need to be persistent. Husband and wife, be aligned, be persistent, hold on to your values, set a certain structure, create a reward system, make certain sacrifices as well. If there are certain things that are sort of causing temptations around for your child to be faulted, remove them, make sacrifices. I think one of the questions was, I think the child would go to the fridge to take chocolates and eat, even though he knows that he shouldn't, right? So maybe for a case like this, for example, you can make certain sacrifices, take away all the chocolates from the fridge. Okay, other members don't eat as and when also. Then you create a reward system whereby the family can eat chocolates together at certain times. Yeah, I think ADHDers, they need some excitement in life. So they start to do funny things, they start to take risks, do adventurous things when they find that day-to-day is too mundane and too boring. So find new ways to connect with them, create the excitement for them in a way that is structured, in a way that the rest of the family members can accommodate and appreciate over time. Yeah, so don't be fixated by the surface issues. And that will tend to happen, especially when parents are busy, because you only see them misbehaving. You don't have time to catch them thinking and doing the right things. So it's very important for you to sacrifice time to be there for them, to catch them more throughout the day. Affirm them when they're doing the right things. Don't leave them alone when they're doing the right things, assuming that is a given. And then you always catch them when they're doing the wrong things. It will be very discouraging for them. Likewise, very discouraging for you as a dad. Because every time you say something, you connect with him or her, is something negative. Yeah. So you got to wear a special lens that can peep deeper into the behavioral issues. Look at the heart issue and the character issues, which will be their foundation to carry them throughout life.
All right.
Otherwise, they are just going to skim through.
Yep, I got you. We are already a little bit over time, so we are not going to end yet. But Moon, do you have something to announce? Okay, what we're going to do is that our panelists have a little bit more time, maybe 10-15 minutes. If you're okay, then we will stay back and continue to maybe answer a few more questions. But in the meantime, I understand it's quite late for many people, so they might want to leave. So I'll allow Moon Lake to close this session as well as make a few announcements, and then we will stop the recording so that other people can ask questions freely without being recorded.
Okay, thank you, Yuan. Yes, so just some announcements before we formally end, but those who want to stay on after this, we can have another couple of minutes of open Q&A, which will not be recorded. Again, please give us your feedback on this event so we know, whether we should do more of these. You can scan the QR code there and let us know. That's the first thing. Again, remember that we talked about the survey at the beginning of this event. Please also help us with the ADHD in Singapore survey. The other thing I would like to highlight again is please visit unlockingadhd.com. This is our website, which has information and resources about ADHD, including understanding what ADHD is about and how it affects different aspects of life, from medication, school, relationships, financial, sports, everything else there. How to live better with ADHD as an adult, as a youth, as families. And also we have links to our Facebook support group. And that's something I really would like to highlight. I found that, as we were planning this event, we realized that for mothers, maybe it's just because of the way we're wired, it's so much easier for us to, meet a girlfriend over like lunch, coffee, even a walk, and then just, pour our heart out. But I think when it comes to guys, there are less opportunities for that. I think sometimes maybe stereotypically guys still have that macho kind of thing where, they maybe, have some beers or play soccer, but they don't really get into, some of the deeper issues. And especially if you have an ADHD child and some of the challenges, not everyone is going to be able to understand what you face. And, some men may be worried about, being judged, or just being thought of as differently. So we would like to find out whether the fathers out there would be interested in maybe having a support group for fathers with ADHD children. And if that's the case, please let us know. There is space in the feedback form to indicate that. You can also go to the Facebook support community for Unlocking ADHD. You have to answer some membership questions. We ask those questions just to make sure that people are there in a safe place and not being marketed to. So please do answer the questions to join us. And again, please follow us on social media for all the links there. I would like to thank Yuan and all the daddies who are here tonight for really sharing from their heart and so authentically as well, because I think what you said really resonated with everyone who attended tonight. And I wish that more dads and more families attended. But again, we are recording this so you can see it on our YouTube, and we will be sharing slides as well with more information for you. These are bonus slides.